Hello friends, a very warm welcome. Continuing our understanding of Weber and his contribution to contemporary sociology, we are here discussing ideal types. A very warm welcome to all of you on Ansarkari. I am Vikas Bhardwaj. Now, as we have seen with the biography of Weber and also understanding how Weber was bringing history and its linkaging with sociology, understanding ideal type is the key, and you will be getting very important comment type questions and long questions on this. Weber believed it was the responsibility of sociologists to develop conceptual tools. So, what is ideal type? Ideal type is a conceptual tool. Now, this conceptual tool is supposed to be used by historians and sociologists. But let's see what ideal type is in terms of Weber. Weber said that an ideal type is formed by one-sided accentuation of one or more points of view by the synthesis of a great many, okay, diffuse, discrete, or more or less present and occasionally absent concrete individually phenomena. So again, I'm repeating, he is saying that one-sided accentuation, that means one-sided exaggerated or one-sided deep inside understanding by bringing different points of view, which is coming through the synthesis of whether it is diffusion, whether it is discrete, whether it is present, whether it is occasionally absent, concrete individual phenomena. All these things, when they are churning together, they are arranged according to those one-sidedly emphasized viewpoints. Which one-sidedly emphasized viewpoints? Which are formed because of one-sided accentuation. And when this is happening, it is converting itself into unified analytical construct. So what is the key word here? Unified analytical construct. So in its conceptual purity, this mental construct which we have just discussed cannot be found empirically anywhere in the reality. Now this is, if one is going with this idea and trying to find it in the real world or in real society, then it is impossible according to Weber. Now this is what is an ideal type. That's why the word itself is ideal. So Weber was not totally consistent in the way he used the ideal type. So to grasp what concept means initially, we have to overlook some of the inconsistencies, because these inconsistencies which were there in the beginning, we have to avoid them, because if we try to find everything is uniform, it is not like that. So at the most basic level, it is a kind of a conceptual construct by a social scientist on the basis of his or her interests and theoretical orientation to capture the essential features of some social phenomena. That is what he is doing. This is a concept. This is a concept by which he is understanding. He is trying to study a social phenomenon. So the most important thing about ideal type is that they are heuristic devices, as we have discussed in our previous lecture. Why? Why they are heuristic devices? Because they are very useful and helpful in doing empirical research in understanding specific aspect of a social world or maybe historical individual. So you can quote in your answers also and your notes also, as Lashman said, an ideal type is essentially, it is a measuring rod. It is a measuring rod. It is a yardstick in words of Stephen Kahlberg. That is what he has created. He is creating a tool, a conceptual tool. So Weber says its function is the comparison with empirical reality in order to establish its divergencies or similarities. So when ideal type is put to test, then empirical reality which is coming out of a social phenomena, it will be showcasing certain divergences, certain similarities. And that's how social phenomena will be described in unambiguously intelligible concepts. These unambiguous intelligible concepts will be helpful in analytical way to understand a concept. And once you do that, you will be able to understand and explain them in a causal. That means their real cause will also be coming out. For example, social scientists would construct an ideal type bureaucracy or ideal typical bureaucracy on the basis of their immersion in historical data, because they will see historical data and then they will find what is an ideal typical bureaucracy. So this ideal type can be compared with actual bureaucracies, because once you are seeing what happened in history, in historical phenomena, identifying certain features and then comparing with the present. So the researcher will be looking for divergences in the real case from the exaggerated ideal type, you know, like we say, for example, Arthashastra. So the next point would be the social scientist will be looking for causes for the deviations in the present times. What are the causes for deviations when he is or she is comparing the present bureaucratic system or model with that of the past? So some typical reasons for divergences may be, what may be? The divergences are actions of bureaucrats that are motivated by misinformation, strategic errors by the bureaucrats, or logical fallacies under guiding the actions of leaders and followers, or the decision made in bureaucracy on the basis of emotion. It is very much possible, or any irrationality in the action of bureaucratic leaders and followers. These 5 points will be those divergencies or those inconsistencies which actually Weber is saying may be possible when compared with the ideal type. So another example what we can take up to understand an ideal typical military battle. It is delineating the principal components of a battle such as opposing armies, opposing strategies, material, disposal, disputed land which is called no man's land, supply and support forces, command centers, leadership qualities. So for example, you can take up examples of Russia-Ukraine war also. So actual battle may not be having all of these elements which we have just discussed. But the researcher is actually looking forward to know what is the difference, what is the inconsistency, what is the divergence. So the basic point is that elements of any particular battle may be compared with the elements identified in the ideal type. So ideal type is created and then you are comparing that ideal type so that a social phenomena can be explained. So the elements of an ideal type, such as components of ideal typical military battle, are not to be thrown together arbitrarily. Similarly, in case of bureaucratic model also, you are not supposed to take the elements in an arbitrary manner. They must be combined, or they are combined on the basis of their compatibility. What is the compatibility? You have to look for the causal reasons. So Susan Hekman, which you can quote also in your notes, ideal types are not the product of the whims or fancy of a social scientist, but they are logically constructed concepts. Very, very important keyword, logically constructed concept. They can and should reflect interest of the social scientist in spite of their logical construction. Otherwise, they will become mechanical. They will be showcasing like a natural scientist. So in Weber's view, the ideal type was to be derived inductively from the real world of social history. So Weber did not believe that it was enough to offer a carefully defined set of concepts. Okay, he was not believing that only by giving a set of concepts it will be enough, especially if they were deductively derived from an abstract theory. If you are just theoretically thinking, if you are even planning for your daily plan and you are preparing for the examination and it is an abstract it is based on abstract ideas, it is going to be failure in terms of Weber. Weber says that the concepts had to be empirically adequate. What is the demand of exam, how much you have to cover, what is the type of study which can score you marks, are you able to handle the stress, are you emotionally competent, and so forth. So Roth, you can always compare Roth when you are always quote Roth when you are talking about that how Weber is always very keen to be empirically sound. So to produce ideal types, researchers had to first immerse themselves in historical reality, then derive the types from that reality. And Weber is also making efforts to find a middle ground between nomothetic and ideographic knowledge, as we have discussed in our previous lecture. And he argued that the ideal type should neither be too general and nor be too specific. He is bringing a middle ground. He is bringing a macro element. For example, in case of religion, he would reject ideal types of the history of religion in general, but he would also be critical of ideal types of very specific phenomena such as individual religious experience. He will say that it is also not fitting the empirical setup. So ideal types are developed of intermediate phenomena such as Calvinism, Pietism, Methodism, Baptism, which are much more spread, which are much more analytical, which are much more broader, which have got so many ideas within them that you can create a kind of a system. So what Weber means to say that ideal types are derived from the real world. They are not to be mirror image of that world. Rather, they are to be one-sided exaggeration, as I just told in the beginning, one-sided accentuations of the essence of what goes in the real world. So more exaggerated the ideal type, more useful it would be for historical research, because more easily you will be able to compare, more divergences would be there, more kind of inconsistencies would be actually highlighted. So the use of the word ideal should not be construed to mean that the concept being described in any sense is the best of all possible worlds. So ideal, it is not an English ideal basically. As used by Weber, the term meant that the form described in the concept was rarely, if ever, found in the real world. Anything is possible, but the Weber's ideal type cannot be found directly compared or directly inspired or directly mirror image of the real world things. So in fact, Weber argued that the ideal type need not to be positive or correct. He is not saying it has to be perfect. It can just as easily be negative. It can be morally repugnant also. You may be feeling a very abhorrent kind of feeling when you are thinking about that what kind of ideas he is putting up. So ideal type should make sense in themselves. They must have a kind of a meaning in themselves. The meaning of their component should be compatible. You know, the meanings of their component should be compatible. What is there in the ideal type? For example, if we are creating a kind of a answer writing series, and though that answer writing series is also an ideal type, because that answer writing series is not perfect. That answer writing series is not saying that you are writing the best of the answers. That answer writing is actually bringing the kind of an exaggeration. When you are working seamlessly, tirelessly, what best will come out given the kind of set of skills. So that's what he's also saying, that it should aid us in making sense of the real world. So our answer writing series, our lectures are also aiding us to make a sense of what the real exam is. So although we have come to think of ideal types as describing static entities, Weber believed that they could describe either static or even dynamic entities. So we can have an ideal type of a structure, such as bureaucracy, or of a social development. If you say bureaucracy, then that's fine. But if you say social development of bureaucracy, that, or the term here used is bureaucratization. That's what we say, bureaucratization. Bureaucratization is the term which is very often you find in newspaper also. How the online services uh, have come up and they are making things more efficient. How, if you are applying for an ATM card, if you are applying for a passport, then there is less chance of a delay because of the digitization and because of the digital public infrastructure. Then you will say it is not it is not actually following the routine bureaucratization or routine bureaucratic model. So ideal types are not developed once and for all, that I would say, because society is constantly changing and the interest of social scientists are also changing. It is necessary to develop new typologies to fit the changing reality. That is why UPSC, when gives you questions, it is also trying to make sure that what you have thought or what your understanding of the concept, that you are able to apply. This is in line with the Weber's view that there can be no timeless concepts in social sciences. These are all very key words which I am putting up in bold. You must write them down. You must make your own notes and you can revise them number of times. So although we have presented relatively unambiguous image of the ideal type, but there are also contradictions in the way Weber defined the concept, because this is after all social sciences. In addition, in his own substantive work, Weber used ideal type in ways that differed from the way he said it was to be used. That means Weber is actually contradicting himself also. And that is what we said in the beginning of this lecture, that this is possible. So as Barger noted, the ideal types presented in economy and society are a mixture of definitions, classifications, and specific hypotheses, seemingly too divergent to be reconcilable with Weber's statements. That means what Weber had been saying, what Weber has been putting across, but when you see his ideal types presented in economy and society, then you are not able to convince yourself that actually what he was saying in the beginning, it is actually defined over here. So Hekman disagreed with Berger on Weber's inconsistency, because there are different sociologists who are having their own viewpoints in defining ideal types. She also recognized Weber offered several varieties of ideal types. Okay, what are those varieties? Historical ideal types, that means relating to phenomena that is found in some particular historical epoch. For example, Weber worked upon the modern capitalistic marketplace. We will be discussing it further. Then general sociological ideal types, These relate to phenomena that cut across a number of historical periods and societies. So general historical ideal type, that means bureaucracy through historical periods and societies. Action ideal types. These are pure types of action based on the motivations of actor. For example, affectual action. Then structural ideal types. These are forms taken by the causes and consequences of social action. For example, traditional domination, how certain structures are met. Puri Yath Yatra and its consequences, or even Gangai Konda, Cholapuram, or where the Mata Vaishno Devi shrine. If you speak, I'm just giving random examples, or even how tribal festivals are there, karma dance and so forth. So I'm just giving structure. If you see them in the structure, social structure. So Weber developed an array of varieties of ideal types, and some of the richness in his work stems from their diversity. Although common to them is the mode of construction. Their mode of construction is common. There might be diversity with that. For example, Karlberg in 1994 he argued that although the heuristic use of ideal types in empirical research is important, it should not be forgotten that they also play a key theoretical role in Weber's work. So Weber, we have already said Weber is rejecting the idea of theoretical laws, but he used ideal types in various ways to create theoretical models. So as I said in the beginning, there cannot be only complete one-sided understanding. There are inconsistencies, and there are also other elements which are reflected through Weber's own understanding. So thus, what we can say, ideal types constitute the theoretical building blocks for the construction of a variety of theoretical models, though Weber is saying that I am completely against any kind of abstract model, abstract ideas, but he is creating uh, theoretical models by using theoretical building blocks. For example, routinization of charisma and rationalization of society. These models are then used to analyze specific historical developments, which we'll be seeing further when we are discussing further more and more concepts about Weber. So thanks a lot, and I believe whatever specific themes we have covered till now, they will be helping you to create a clear understanding of what is the demand of the mains exam